Arms here, and this is the Fire Stick 4K Max, second generation. Why are we talking about this? Because we're talking about Xbox Cloud streaming today. And I think this is a good topic because everybody's talking about what can be an Xbox. Well, guess what? The Fire Stick 4K Max can be an Xbox. And it uses basically the same sort of technology that we saw in the Samsung TVs to stream Xbox Cloud Gaming to another device. Now, what's interesting here is that this device is pretty powerful and that, the idea of being able to stream to this device, it's such a low-cost option that you could replace a console. Now, what we want to know is what's the quality like and what does it take to get the job done, and is it worth the money? Well, we're going to investigate and find out. Packaged in a compact orange box, this second generation version of the Fire Stick brings a couple of noteworthy upgrades over its predecessor. Among these enhancements are a faster processor, 16 gig of RAM, support for Wi-Fi 6E to ensure smoother performance, and better connectivity. Once you open the box, you'll find the Fire Stick, the HDMI extension cable, and obviously the remote, and then some batteries for your remote, a quick start guide, and a power block and a cable. Now, the Fire Stick is actually quite small, which makes total sense since you are plugging it into an HDMI port on your TV, and you can only make the device so big. An HDMI extension pass-through cable is included to make it easier to reach hard-to-reach HDMI ports on your TV that sometimes are placed in such a way that sometimes the cable doesn't fit. We've had some issues with this extension pass-through cable, and it didn't work well for me and my test setup. During testing, we discovered that the Fire Stick's physical orientation in the HDMI port can significantly affect Wi-Fi signal strength. To optimize your connection, we recommend trying to use the included HDMI pass-through cable to reposition your Fire Stick. Now, on the side of the device, you'll find a USB port that serves a dual purpose. While it's primarily used to power the Fire Stick, it also functions as a standard USB port for connecting what? Yes, that's right, a wired USB Ethernet adapter. It's crucial that you use the included AC power block, however, and avoid plugging it into a TV USB port because these often fail to deliver steady power and can potentially cause issues. Now, the included remote is not the premium version of the remote found in other models of Fire TV, but it facilitates the initial setup and navigation of the Fire Stick applications. However, once the Cloud Gaming app is installed, you can seamlessly control everything from your gaming controller, so, not really making the remote a whole lot necessary thereafter. Now, this small box that contains the USB for the Fire Stick, it uses a pass-through. Since the majority of people will not use the wired connection, it was made a decision by Amazon to go ahead and basically save $15 and not put Ethernet in the Fire Stick. Now, instead, they're going to offer it as an additional add-on for $15 for people who either need or want wired connectivity. Well, there are third-party adapters that will work with the Fire Stick. We didn't see much of a price difference between the third-party and the Amazon offering. This is the second generation version of the Fire Stick 4K Max, and it has received a number of performance upgrades and enhancements since the last version, including a quad-core processor from MediaTek. It's an ARM Cortex-A55, upgraded from 1.8 to 2 gigahertz. The Fire Stick supports accelerated hardware video decoding, and it has a Power VR IMG GE9215 GPU clocked at 850 megahertz. Beyond the USB 10100 networking, the Fire Stick has support for Wi-Fi 6E, which means you can use the new 6 gigahertz spectrum provided your wireless access point supports it. In addition, it supports almost every other Wi-Fi standard and band you can imagine, so there's that. The Fire Stick runs Fire OS 8, offering a smooth and friendly interface. Its internal flash storage has been doubled from 8 to 16 gig, providing more space for apps and content. It also supports a wide range of Bluetooth devices, utilizing the Bluetooth 5.2 and BLE standards. In terms of audio, the Fire Stick can deliver Dolby Atmos 7.1 and 2-channel stereo and HDMI pass-through to 5.1, provided your TV or soundbar is compatible. Additionally, the Fire Stick supports HDMI 2.1 and the HDMI CP 2.2, ensuring modern compatibility with modern devices, and that covers most of the 4K Ultras. Now, it also supports most other Ultra standards for color, and those advanced visual standards are going to vary depending on if your TV supports that. Perhaps most important tip to get the best performance out of your TV with the xboxcloudgaming is to make sure that the HDMI port that the Fire Stick is plugged into is in ALLM mode, which means auto low latency mode, called game mode on some TVs. It is part of the HDMI 2.1 standard, so if you have it plugged into an HDMI 2.1 port, it should switch automatically. So what is Xbox Cloud Gaming? Well, Xbox Cloud Gaming lets Game Pass Ultimate members stream titles from the extensive Xbox Cloud Gaming catalog, as well as previously purchased games with streaming entitlement rights. It's worth checking your library, as some of your own games may now include streaming access. Now, the Amazon Fire Stick supports the Xbox Cloud Gaming application, which can be downloaded directly from the Amazon App Store. This app closely mirrors the version that's available on Samsung TVs, and we're told will be available on LG TVs soon. It is important to understand that the Fire Stick delivers a 1080p experience, which Xbox is trying to deliver from the cloud. So, the games that you are playing are really the Xbox Series S optimized versions of the game, which are optimized for 1080p or less. These games are encoded using a one-size-fits-all encoder, so there is no optimization by different game type. We think this will be offered as a future enhancement, perhaps as Microsoft moves towards 4K streaming. Microsoft recommends a 30 megabit downstream continuous connection for best performance, and we can confirm that we saw peak performance in this range, but most of the time it was below this requirement, and latency seemed to have way more impact on the feel of actual gaming than using the Fire Stick and the Xbox Cloud Gaming application. So let's get started here and get the Xbox Cloud Gaming application on your Fire Stick. Now, before we get started, we're going to assume that the Fire Stick is already installed, connected to the internet, updated to the latest version, and if you haven't done so yet, you need to complete all necessary updates and reboots before proceeding. Once this is done, you're ready to download and install the Xbox Cloud Gaming application. Once you're in the Amazon Game Store, you're going to download the Xbox Cloud Gaming application and install it. Once you reach the login screen, you'll finally see the options of sign in, sign up, or see the games. If you don't already have an account, this is your opportunity to go ahead and create one. If you already have an account, you can go ahead and sign in. Now, once you sign in, you are at the next screen. You will use your phone to scan the QR code, which will take you to Xbox/setup. Then you can log into your account, enter the code that's on the screen, and once completed, you are authorizing this Fire Stick device to use cloud streaming. Next, you will need to pair a controller. Now, any, and I mean just about any controller that's Bluetooth will do. Now, select the controller pairing options. For example, we're going to use an Xbox controller for this, and we follow the prompts. We allow it to pair the controller, and once completed, you're good to go. like to mention this is a pretty easy pairing process and it worked very well. At the next screen, Microsoft's going to remind you again that you need 30 megabits or higher of downstream on 5G wireless or a wired connection. Notice that's what it recommends. Also, you have to acknowledge this before you are able to proceed to the top level of the Xbox Cloud Gaming app, which means in many ways it will look similar to your Xbox dashboard. So let's talk about the networking testing and my setup for this. Now, when testing the Fire Stick, we found that two things have the most impact on the performance and quality of your experience. First, it's the way that your Fire Stick is connected to your local network, and second, how fast and steady is your internet service provider's performance. Now, gotta tell you, speaking of internet service providers, many of you are going to ask about 5G cellular wireless. Okay, so we tested that both hot-spotted and with a solution advertised as a whole home internet solution, and we wouldn't recommend these as a good way to go. We connected the Fire Stick to this, but the latency was all over the place, and the play experience quality just was not very good. So I would not suggest this as a good way to experience the Xbox Cloud streaming on cellular. Now, in the testing, we wanted to determine the best possible performance and the best possible experience using the Fire Stick. For our testing, we chose three testing scenarios. The first is 5G wireless from the Fire Stick to a 500 megabit by 40 megabit cable modem. We think this represents a solid medium range configuration and probably close to the minimum you're going to want. Now, to evaluate the difference you could obtain by taking advantage of the 6E Wi-Fi 7 using the 6 gigahertz spectrum, we wanted to see if that really impacts performance. But we're going to connect this to a fiber internet connection at 1 gig by 1 gig, which should give us a good idea of the potential performance of wireless in this band. Now, in an effort to see how fast we can really go, we tested the Fire Stick with the Amazon USB wired Ethernet adapter. Now, we have this connected to the same fiber internet at 1 gig by 1 gig, and this USB 100 megabit adapter should probably provide the best and most stable connection. Now, we tested three configurations with three games: Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Forza Horizon 5, and Mortal Kombat 11. All of these are currently available for streaming in the Xbox Cloud streaming catalog. Testing the Fire Stick with the Cloud Gaming at 500 megabit by 40 megabit with Wi-Fi, the first thing we noticed was the quality of the picture. The quality of the picture was quite a bit better than we expected. But if you look close up, you do see some artifacting, and still you see overall in the testing at this speed, it was better than we anticipated. Now, the gameplay, however, was a little bit more sensitive to latency. We noticed with both Call of Duty and Mortal Kombat, it was almost a process of adapting to the latency, which seemed to occur after a time. Now, does that mean it was bad? No, it certainly doesn't. But when examining the traffic at a lower network level, we noticed that the latency had more to do with the devices and interference and limitations that go with using 5 gigahertz wireless than anything else. Despite changing the orientation of the Fire Stick in relation to the access point and trying different channels, we are confident that it was in the best configuration, but still it wasn't perfect. So this is something that you need to consider. So in conclusion, 5 gigahertz wireless is playable, but it's latency sensitive. Now, testing the Fire Stick with Xbox Cloud Gaming with the 1 gig by 1 gig connection over 6G wireless, or the 6E Wi-Fi 7, the quality of the picture was about the same as the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, but still better than we anticipated. Overall, when testing at this speed, it still was better than we thought it would be. Now, here's the thing. Gameplay on all three games was excellent. We didn't see as much latency sensitivity. as we saw with the 5 gigahertz wireless, and it was obvious when playing on the 6 gigahertz, it felt a little bit more responsive and smoother. But we are not talking about a massive improvement here. It was better performance that seemed to be able to be felt. And I think that's what's important to note here. In conclusion, we would rate it as very playable, with much less latency sensitivity due to the Wi-Fi 6 gigahertz performance. Clearly, this is the best wireless option and the best way to go for wireless users. Testing a Fire Stick with the 1 gig by 1 gig connection now with a wired 10100 megabit connection, the quality of the picture, believe it or not, was about the same as the wireless 6E. I didn't really see any difference there, but we think it has more to do with the encoder than anything else. So overall, testing at this speed, the picture quality was about the same. Now, the gameplay on all 3 games was top-notch. We didn't see as much latency sensitivity as we saw with the wireless options. It was obvious that while we were playing, it did feel more responsive and smoother. But again, not by a massive amount. The difference that we could feel between the 6 gigahertz wireless performance and the Ethernet performance was about a lot closer than we would have imagined. It was about the same. Performance of the 10100 Ethernet connection was consistent and without issue. And for the best lag-free experience with lowest latency, a wired connection is probably the optimal choice. To eliminate any latency altogether, we would recommend the wired connection, as wireless will inevitably introduce some sort of lag regardless of your setup. Now, in conclusion, it was the best choice over everything else, but it is wired. I would say then 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi next, followed by Wi-Fi 5 gigahertz, and then 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi at the bottom. So what are the real takeaways from everything that we've done and everything that we tested? You know, I had to think about that for a minute. First one would be for me is that, you know, it was a lot better experience than I definitely thought it would be. And that's something I've got to say that impressed me. Sure, the encoder could use work, and sure, they could tweak it more. But if you have a good internet connection and you have a good connection on your local network, you can get really good performance with this and acceptable playable latency. And I gotta say, that alone made me very surprised. But I gotta say that it is a great way to access Game Pass at a different price point. But again, you are making sacrifices over real hardware. You know, the question becomes, is that really what you want? Many people would say, I don't want all the cables and all the extra stuff. This is a better option for me. And it is a viable option. I do think that's the surprise out of this whole video. The other thing I would say is the performance of the Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 7 blew us away. And I would tell you that if you can use that for your wireless with this and upgrade your local network, you definitely are going to get some better performance. So that's another thing to consider. But obviously, going with a wired connection still is best. And remember, the internet connection has a lot to do with it. And if you don't live in the right country, you may not be able to do this at all. This has contingent on Amazon and Microsoft. And do remember, it is still in beta. So thank you for watching. What do you think? Is this the future? Tell me down below in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say about cloud streaming, because I know for me, it was something a lot better than I expected. We'll see you in the next video. Subscribe for me. Bye now.